Can you hear me? Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first security session. And thank you, everybody, for attending at 9:30. I know there were a lot of parties last night, so I really appreciating you coming on time. So this security session will have 3 presentations. The first one is from CF Chui from Arbor Networks. It's about worldwide infrastructure security report highlights, and I'm looking forward to hearing about it. The next person is Alexander Asimov from Curator Labs. He's going to speak about BGP flexibility and its consequences. And the third one, sugar at the end, is Andrzej Robachevsky from ISOC with routing security in 2017. And he says that we can do better. So I'm asking CF to join the stage and start the presentation. I'm sorry? You can use this mic, or you can use that one.
Okay, this is the clicker.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'll use this one. That's fine.
Okay. I leave this at the next.
Good morning. I'm CF from Arbor Networks. I hope that everyone is enjoying the event in the last few days, and you probably are. For those who have actually attended the last 2 or 3 APRICOT, the one in Ho Chi Minh City, and then I think the other one in Oakland, you probably might have already, watched my previous version of the research report highlight. For this year, originally, I'm thinking about doing something slightly different, but it seems like that in 2017, there's still something that is interesting, some interesting observation that we might actually want to take a look at it again. So, this one? Okay, good. For those, just as a recap, what is the WISR? We call it the Worldwide Infrastructure Security Report. Like every year around October time, we actually create a questionnaire and invite all the people. It went to a lot of different people, but mostly the people who involved in security operation for service provider or large enterprise. And the focus is that we ask them a numbers of questions regarding different kind of security concern threat, from advanced threat to DDoS, and even about staff and budget. Anything in that area. The idea is actually want to share the experience, your comment from the people who deal with security threat on a daily basis. So for us, we can actually take a look and see, okay, what is happening to other people, what is happening to me, and then we kind of actually understand that. I mean, experience usually help us to prepare better. So this is actually available on our website. For those who haven't get a chance to read that, I'll suggest that you might want to actually download a copy and read it on your way back home on the plane. It's not to fake a copy of volume, it should be fine. Okay, so the first thing, when we complete the surveys start from October. We actually for about a month. So by November, we got all the responses, and we start to look at them. And obviously, for most of us, okay, the first question we have is, how big a DDoS attack have we seen in the last year? Now, this is taken from the survey every year all the way back to like 13 years ago, because this version is the 13th version of the research. And you can see that this year, the largest attack that have reported to us from the survey. I want to point out the thing because we're going to looking at a slightly different numbers later, but from the survey, it's 600 gig last year. So for those who actually respond to the questionnaire, or the question how big is a DDoS attack you have seen, the largest one is 600. When we saw that one, and we right away go back and look at what we have seen in 2016, the number is 800. So look like there's like what? A 25% decrease in the peak DDoS attack size. Sounds like good news, is it? Well, the way we look at this one is that it doesn't really matter whether it's 800 gig or 600 gig, okay, is enough to bring down any network in an internet in the world. Another thing we're actually going to observe and point out is that if we look back at time, and we look at what, 2010, what is the largest attack we have seen at that time? 100 gig. And then following 2 years, the peak attack size actually dropped or have been reported to drop below 100 gig for continuously for 2 years. And guess what? What happened in 2013? We start to see reflection amplification attack using DNS, using NTP survey on the world, and then we report a peak attack size of over 300 gig. And we thought this is already the end of the world. No, not really. 2016, the 800 gig, probably we are aware that there is a major international sport event that happened in the world. And then we have also seen IoT devices being abused and exploited and used in DDoS. And here we go, we see an 800 gig. Someone told us that he has seen an 800 gig of DDoS attack. There has been a cycle that we have observed in the attacker behavior is that they have discovered, they have invent or reinvent a new kind of weapon. And they play around with it. Okay, they went it out, told the world about that one, I mean the underworld. And then people start to use it. And they observe how much damage, how much impact we can do with that one. And typically, we will then see a period of time that they go quiet a little bit. They start to actually learn from the experience what is working, what is not working effectively, how can we improve our tools. So typically, we see that cycle. We see a very big attack, quiet down a little bit, another wave. That will be interesting, again, to see whether this actually holds true, although we have seen that in the past. This is the behavior. This is the pattern. So again, that's why when we look at the number, and then we feel like, oh, okay, maybe finally we get DDoS off our back. I don't think so. And if we look at from another different angles, here we see the terms about Atlas. For those who actually have heard about our presentation before, probably has a little idea about what Atlas is. Atlas is a system that Arbor maintains, where we get data, statistic feedback from the system we've been installed in our customer. So those actually record how many DDoS alert, I use the term alert, is that because an event okay, come to the network, and then where they're coming from, where they're going to the site, blah, blah, blah. All this metadata sent back to us for analysis. So if we look at the event, the data we have collected in our system in Atlas for 2017, the largest attack we have seen from the system is 641, 2017. And then 2016, 841. Well, that actually kind of in line with the whistle report is a good thing. At least demonstrate that we're not lying, okay? But again, there's a general trend today. But in general, the numbers of attacks is increasing. And we also break it down in terms of the range, the size of the attack between 2 gig to 5 gig, 5 gigs to 10 gig, 20 to 50, 50 to 200, 200 to 500. In the whistle report, you see the section that will actually show you all the breakdown and the graph. In fact, between 50 to 100, 100 to 200 gig attack, the numbers of events we have seen is increasing. This actually means the attacker actually serve in a country in South America. Reflection amplification attack, one of our favorite topics. And this year we start to look into it a little bit more. Now, there is a cycle, okay. 2013, the largest one we have seen is a DNS reflection amplification attack. And then NTP catch up, and then we see SSDP, and then we see that. 2016, 2017, we start to see DNS climb back in the chart again. And if you look at the chart there, the most popular protocol that been used, okay, in reflection amplification attack is DNS and NTP. And in fact, the largest reflection amplification attack we have seen is also NTP. So for the past few years, we have seen a lot of this attack. Most of the volumetric DDoS attack, or whether it's targeting Europe or Asia, are usually made up of reflection amplification attack. And we have a good understanding of it. We know how to detect a reflection amplification attack. We know how to mitigate one. So the attacker then start to do something slightly different. In the last 6 months, when I say last 6 months, I mean the second half of the year of 2017, we actually observed that connectionless LDAP being used in reflection amplification attack. And the numbers of attack has been double. Okay, and if we compare the time frame, as I state in the slide here, we come to see that you see around about 5,000 attack of connectionless LDAP in a week on a global basis. I didn't actually break it down into region, okay, because I wanted to keep that easy for us to look at. That means, again, while we are kind of thinking that we have all the necessary procedure and process to protect ourselves against reflection amplification attack, then suddenly a new one come up. And then we start to analyze what it is, okay, how they use that, how to detect it, and how to mitigate that. And then, if you guys have been reading some, well, I have been reading some internal email thread, is that we see yet another reflection amplification attack using a different protocol. If we spread that out, do your current existing DDoS detection mechanism are able to detect if you base on a individual /32 addresses? Are you able to detect that? We actually have seen examples that actually been hiding behind the radar, it get into the network, it causing some impact and damage. Not until at that point we go back and look at what happened, we realize that the attacker had been using a slightly different way, okay, to bypass the detection system. Just what I want to point out is that we always have to be on alert. For those who actually are our network, okay, customers, and then you have been using our system, go and talk to your local contact point. We should have something, a guideline for you how you can actually use the system to detect that, okay? But for those who actually are not, but it still might be a good thing to understand what is carpet bombing, and then what is a way to actually detect and mitigate that. I think mitigate is not too difficult. It's how you be able to detect that. Because individual /32 see a smaller, okay, attacks. But when they add up all together, going into your network, into your data center that hosts that /24 addresses, is a volumetric DDoS attack. Okay. We spent a lot of time about talking about volumetric attack. I just want to come back and highlight again, it is not the only DDoS attack that could happen to you. The research report actually break it into two different sections, the service provider section and the enterprise sections, okay? We pull this number from the enterprise section because sometimes it make a little bit more sense about multi-factor. A lot of the time, service provider at their level, at the infrastructure, they don't really see, are able to detect all that application layer attack. But for the enterprise who actually hosting that service, they see that. That number, 40%, actually is like a 20% increase compared year to year between 2016 and 2017. It again point out the fact that attackers are mixing up the attack vector. They won't rely on a single attack vector to actually try to impact or achieve what they want to do. They mix this up with application layer attack, target your web server, your DNS infrastructure, state assertions, okay, way to actually impact your stateful devices plus volumetric. So again, in the last few years, you see the whole industry talk about a hybrid solution where you will have to have some inline devices on premises plus a upstream cloud-based mitigation solution. Again, just a reminder that for folks actually looking to do that on the enterprise, you will have to look at it, a complete protection mechanism. Another interesting thing again is that when we ask this question to the enterprise customer, we already expect HTTP DNS should be on the top of the list about the application being attacked by the attacker. But I am a little bit surprised personally that email surfaced this year. And I think even in 2016, we don't even probably see that it's at a very low number, single digit. 37% of the respondents told us that the email infrastructure get impacted. Again, point to the fact that attacker trying various different way to actually to hurt you. This is from the service provider. We asked the same question to the service provider, okay, and then the number different slightly. 75% of them respond they see mainly volumetric, okay, and then 12, 13 about the other. Again, it's logical because for the service provider, for the infrastructure, it will be, unless they see a really big attack, okay, at the certain application layer or state exhaustion, they probably see most of the time volumetric. And then in terms of the port numbers, okay, or in terms of the application, now that could decide here, okay, the bar chart here, the 80 to 80% DNS HTTP also include volumetric. They see that high volume attack actually targeting a port 80, targeting a port 53. Okay, it not necessarily has to be just a kind of like a HTTP level GET request to try to that kind of attacks or others. Not really. So I just want to point out that fact. A painful problem. So how many attacks you seen? The facts. Again, look at the bullet point, more than double our enterprise reporting more than 100 per DDoS attack on a year basis. In fact, if you look at that, if 100 per attack in the last 12 months actually mean what? 8 to 9 attacks per month. Now, we haven't actually asked them whether there's a service impacting or not. But we asked the same question to the data center operator. Now, 78% of that told us that they see between a 1 to 20 service affecting attack. Not just something that just see, okay, use up the bandwidth. In fact, they're actually hurting them. Now, when we say the impact, then the next question, obviously, we want to ask the respondent is that what kind of impact you see? Okay. That come with the next slide here. But similar question, we look at the vertical. That is from the service provider section, slightly different. Okay, we ask them, okay, when you say attack, where they targeting? When they say 70% of the attack is subscriber, that means they're not attacking their infrastructure, not their DNS, not their routing, or their management control plane, or whatever. They are targeting their subscriber. And there, when you break it down, you see the usual suspect. The finance, the government, the e-commerce, the hosting. In fact, we actually say that is all walks of life. You are going to be a target. A lot of people still think that especially enterprise. I think for most of us here who are service provider side, we know that. But still a lot of the enterprise people, customer has the feeling that why people want to attack me? What for? But again, then when we look at motivation, we see, okay, some of that, okay, why they want to attack you? Okay, the impact. The business impact typically, okay, losing revenue, increase the operational costs, okay. Operational expenses could be because people running around to actually fix a problem, okay, to make sure that, okay, stop that DDoS attack. And because of this stress and pressure, okay, well, people leave, you have to train new people, all this kind of thing, because you are dealing with DDoS all the time. brand damage, well, okay, an obvious, okay, impact from that one as well. So you see here, we use the example from the data center on the business impact, but on the report, we also have like different section and what other people look at, but we just use the data center as example here. On the left-hand side of the slide, the diagram is about, the thing that we're usually more interested, concerned about is the money figure. Okay, what is the typical, okay, impact, damage, okay, from a DDoS attack, we say. Have a respondent say impact between 10 to 1,000K, okay, US dollar, okay, double from 2016. In fact, you see the last number here, 11% actually say that damage to them are between 10 to 100. Okay, that is a higher number that we have seen compared to 2016. And if we look at consequences, again, this is not just the data center. Then we look at a enterprise, and particularly we can again the same reasoning, same point that we mentioned about brand damages, operation increases, or even customer churn, losing revenue. Yeah, typically C-level concern about that one. Then we ask another question about concern and threat. Now, I probably want to explain what we mean by concern here and what we mean by threat here, because for the first time I look at the chart, I have the same question. Concern means that, okay, what you worry about. That might or might not have happened. Threat here means actually you have seen that. So it's more like, this is what I'm afraid of. This is what I actually have seen. And ransomware is a good example here. 64% of the enterprise respondents say that they're very concerned about ransomware, various kind of ransomware. But interesting is that 35% of them actually has experienced that threat. But again, it's okay. I mean, it is actually always good to actually be alert about things that you can happen. And you are concerned about ransomware, probably the next thing is that you want to understand what I can do, okay, to help me do that. So this is from the enterprise side. So DDoS remain the number 2 threat and number 3 concern. And again, interesting enough is that, okay, you typically see like 60% of them as concerned, but only like 30% of them have experienced this. This is from, particularly interesting, I will point out in the last one here, APT is the number 2 concern. But now, I have some question about this number, 15%. Okay, is this really that low, or simply that they don't know what has happened? So again, I look at that number, I find it, well, you all know that everyone is talking about advanced threat these days. Is this really that number that low, that we have actually experienced that? To be honest, I don't have an answer on that one. Now the service provider side, a little bit more in line. Okay, now, okay, it's better. The concern and the threat, same definition, okay. DDoS is the number 1 concern and also a number 1 threat. 88% has that concern, and 87% actually has that threat. That means, yeah, it is real. It is happening. It's not just something that I have it on my mind that might happen. And infrastructure outage is the second spot, but what slightly down there, I think is the last 3 of that is compromise of the managed network. Only about 70% have that threat. That means they have experienced something related to that one. But there's like more than 30% of them have the concern. It could probably relate back to all this SDN, SD-WAN, NFV, okay, infrastructure we're putting together, which rely heavily on the control plane. Now, I think that probably should be a legitimate concern for us. Again, if we start to attack your control plane, it could bring a lot of damages. We don't know that, we haven't seen, okay, something reported on a large scale of that one, but I think you guys are all service providers, most of you guys, okay, you know that what you're heading to, what kind of new infrastructure, what kind of new technology you're going to use. And obviously the control plane aspect become more and more of a factor of concern here. Okay, I'm sure I will. Very quickly, one for the last few slides here. I just want to take up too many time of the other presenter. The DDoS backdoor is more about what kind of solution you use. Okay. Flow telemetry is the number one mechanism we use to detect, okay, for a DDoS event alert, which is, okay, probably everyone here assume that you agree with that. And we also have other tools and things like that. Effectiveness, also the same thing is that the flow telemetry is a very effective tool right now for us for that purpose. Mitigation, we call it IDMS, Intelligent DDoS Mitigation System. Good thing is that 88% of respondents say that we're using that. Along on that one, you see flow spec, you see remote trigger black hole, you even see firewall being used to mitigate these. Now, again, you shouldn't rely on just one mechanism to protect yourself against DDoS. IDMS is good. But you have all these networking devices in your network you can leverage in terms of flow spec, in terms of remote trigger, the black hole. You should use them. You should have a workflow that you can deploy all of them. And depend on the situation, okay, which one work more effectively. So again, I believe you guys know better than me even is that flow spec is a very effective solution, to be honest. And flow spec plus IDMS together will allow you a lot of flexibility, okay, and how you can actually deal with different kind of attack. Yeah, I want to go through the last one. The last few one is about motivation. This is an enterprise side. Worth pointing out is that the motivation we believe, or the enterprise, okay, a customer believe is that criminal demonstrating DDoS attack. Okay, the capability. That probably mean that, okay, they use this as a, like ransomware or extortion. Extortion actually happened on the number 4 point, the criminal extortion attempt at 33%. Okay, that means this is no longer a college kid and try to actually impact your services. It's about someone trying to make money out of it. It's a cybercrime. Same question from the service provider end is, now the first one is online gaming related. Now, obviously, you don't see that one in the enterprise side. Is that if you are enterprise network, you see a lot of gaming traffic going in and out of your network, that it is a serious problem. You should not. So if I take away the online gaming related, okay, motivation here, they are more or less in line with the enterprise customer as they will towards motivation. I mean, attacker motivation. Operational security, good thing is that we see people spending money on the SOC team. Unfortunately, on the enterprise side, we still see they're slightly lagging behind. Okay, you probably can read a little bit more on the report itself here. And the last few slides here, SDN, NFV, deployment, I think, yeah, in general, we also ask something slightly different from the security concern. We want to know the industry, okay, how they think about new technology, particularly in the last 2 years, we ask questions about SDN and NFV. This is the response. Are they planning to deploy it? They have already deployed in the network and things like that. This is the last slide. It's a busy slide. It's just a summary on how many response we go out, okay, what are the breakdown in terms of region, in terms of vertical, and things like that. Now this year, okay, we have about 390, okay, respondent, okay. We have more than that. But after we filter out some of the duplicate or some of the information that's not really very useful to us, we scale it down to around 390. Okay, so this is a number. They come from different regions. You can see here, APAC, North America, different kind of vertical, tier 1, tier 2 service provider, large enterprise, and things like that. Just to give you an idea, is that we feel quite happy with the number. We have a good distribution in terms of region. We have a good distribution in terms of service provider, enterprise, because 5, 6 years ago, majority of the respondents are only service provider. So we kind of like a more limited scope on what we can see. But this is slightly better. I know it's actually very quick. Okay, I'm already over my time here. But I invite you guys to actually go and take a look at the report. We trimmed it down a lot this year. And then I think there's some interesting facts, some interesting number we can look at. And if you have other questions, we have a booth there. Feel free to drop by and just talk to us. So I think I'm already overrun. So I pass back to you first.
Wait just a second. We still have questions. Okay. Thank you very much. It was very informative information, and I'm sure we need a lot of time just to digest all the informations. Is anybody having some kind of... Oh, great. Art.
I have a short question. Toma Gavrichenkov, Curator Labs. Regarding the size of volumetric attacks currently, I wanted to ask if you have noticed any changes since the beginning of this year due to memcached amplification. I've submitted a lightning talk for that today, and so it has this trend about the size of volumetric attacks going down. Has it changed since the beginning of this year? What's your experience?
The research report is a annual questionnaire go out, so the public don't keep up to date. The Atlas is a continuous real-time monitoring system. I haven't really spent a lot of time looking at the data I have collect, okay, but in the beginning of the year, January, February, correct, the maximum size seems to be remain, okay, around under 600 or something like that, okay. However, as we point out earlier on, it doesn't mean that we're going to see a trend going down. We probably need to keep on looking at that one. I believe is that, okay, our research team people in Abernethy believe that this year we might actually see a lower number because the attacker are probably consolidating the tools, the system, and get to learn more about what they can do and what kind of, as I mentioned about, we see new product used in reflection application. So the short answer to your question is that it could be, but I probably 3 months later, I'll look at the data again and see whether it's really going down or not. Yes.
Okay, let's look at it. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Anybody else? Please.
I saw that your analyze system deliver insight into 1/3 of global internet traffic. How does your company achieve to get so many traffic for analyze?
Okay.
This is the first question. My second one is, I thought that the DDoS size is larger in the North American than other regions, right? And what's your opinion about that? What the reason? Why?
Okay. The first question about Atlas. Okay, the Atlas is actually a system that well, our network is a vendor. Okay, we provide DDoS protections solution to a lot of service provider and large enterprise. In fact, on the system that we install, there is a checkbox that we ask the customer, are you willing to share DDoS event or statistic with us? At this moment, we have more than 300 customers that are willing to share this data with us. That data actually includes like attacking source addresses, destination addresses, port numbers, size. Although, I want to point out that we anonymize the address. Okay, we take away the first 2 bytes of the address so that you can't really tell who are they, where they're coming from, although we do have a way to do that. But we make sure that we observe privacy concern, we do that. But then you see we have 300 different customers all over the world. Most of them are tier 1 and tier 2 service provider that see most of the internet traffic. And they report to them, they see attack coming from these area, country, what kind of attack, okay, what port number being used. So this is how we collect all this statistic and then analyze, oh, okay, I see 200,000 event of DDoS attack happen in Hong Kong, and they're coming from what geo breakdown, what they are reflection attack or whatever. So this is how we get a number, all from the system that installed it all over the world on a real-time basis. Okay. The second question about the largest attack. You see, okay, look like, okay, in 2017, the largest one, the 641 gig attack, we have seen from the Atlas system, yes, it's happened in Latin America, okay, not America. But if I go back and look at 2006, okay, 2016, again, the largest attack, 800 something, happened to be the same country, okay, happened to be related to an international sporting event. So you know what? I think the reason is that because of that particular event that attract a lot of publicity, attract the attacker to do that, okay, and that's still going on. Okay, we still see, okay, a lot of attack, okay, towards that particular country, even after the event. But if we go back in longer term, 2015, okay, I believe the largest attack we have seen in 2015 did actually happen in North America. So it's hard to say that, okay, why, but the last year, 2016, is quite obvious because of a large international event. And it's usually true. We have seen that every 4 years, or even the soccer game, okay, we usually see, okay, big attack related to that, probably because of high publicity. And the attacker like that. Sometimes, okay, depends on what the purpose is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Amazing presentation. I'm afraid we don't have time for more questions, but feel free to follow up with the author later. I also want to remind you that the presentation will be available online in case if you want to see, if you want to be reminded for more information. So the next presentation, I would like to invite Alexander Asimov, and he's going to speak about BGP flexibility and its consequences.
Good morning. My name is Alexander Asimov. I'm from Kyoto Labs. And today I'd like to discuss with you flexibility of BGP configuration processes and its consequences. So the interdomain routing ecosystem is a unique world with thousands of players that have which have same rights and obligations. So each ISP in the world may request address space from its route registry. It may announce prefixes and receive traffic. And of course, it also has several obligations. It must not hijack address space that doesn't belong to this ISP. It must not create route leaks and must block spoofed traffic. And it should create ingress filters at its customer links. And unfortunately, all this is fake. The only obligation that ISP has is to pay fee to the routing registry. All other stuff is nothing more than recommendations. And if you have a goodwill and understanding of the process, you may support it or may not. And of course, this flexibility in following rules has consequences. There are two main BGP events that happen in the routing ecosystem. First one is BGP hijacks, when ISP announces prefixes that doesn't belong to it. And the second one is route leaks, when ISP announces prefixes that are received from one upstream provider or peer to another upstream provider or peer. So let's speak about most notable event of previous year. It was Google. And by mistake, Google leaked a number of prefixes that were learned from peers in Japan to Verizon. As a result, disrupting significant part of Japan internet. it was in headlines or in newspapers. It was widely discussed, and unfortunately, for a significant part of community, it resulted not in a raise of awareness, but supported a very dangerous illusion that there was a hijack of YouTube in 2008, and after 10 years, there is a root leak of Google, and nothing else is happening in the world. Of course, it is not. There are thousands of events daily, and also such events like Google that are affecting regional or even global internet have already become regular. So let's take a look at several significant incidents that took place from the mid of December to the mid of January. First one is a birthday hijack. So everybody loves birthdays, especially kids. What you need for a great birthday party? You need cake, friends, candles, and do not forget to make a wish before you blow up candles. So every USP is a birthday, and each ISP wants to become one day a center of the internet. And so that's what happened to the new ISP that emerged in Russia. So at the beginning of its life, it hijacked most of content providers in the world, including Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Russian huge content providers like Mail.ru and Vkontakte. And its wish came true. So it was the center of the internet, fortunately only for a couple of minutes. Next event happened in India, 2 weeks after the hijack in Russia. And here was a root leak between two upstream providers that resulted in significant latency increase for affected services, especially for affected users and users in India. For some services, the traffic was redirected to Europe and to India again. So normal delay is about 40 milliseconds. Here the delay was about 300 milliseconds. And next one was again in Russia. So Moscow is famous for traffic jams. Moscow have terrible traffic jams. And Moscow city government constantly fighting this problem. But this time, instead of fighting traffic jams, the ISP that belongs to city mayor created a root leak between huge transit providers in Russia. It was also globally distributed through peering links. As a result, a significant part of Russian users has no internet for a couple of minutes because it was a death leak. The amount of traffic was so high that the ISP of Moscow city government was just gone. So what do we have? We do not have BGP exams. We don't have BGP police. We do have BGP ingress filters. And something is terribly wrong with them if such events are globally propagated. So, as an idea, the BGP ingress filters works as follows. You have a AS set that is transformed in a set of autonomous system numbers. And for this set of autonomous system numbers are retrieved route objects that are transformed to a prefix list, and this prefix list is applied to the as a route map at your customer links. Just a highlight, it's only a prefix list. It doesn't perform any origin validation. So in ideal situation, ISET represents customer cone. So it's just the set of customers of your customer and so on until the bottom. And if ISP receives a prefix that doesn't belong to customer cone, it must be dropped. Of course, this approach has its own limitations. For example, if routing event happens inside customer cone, it doesn't matter if it's a hijack or a root leak, it will be accepted and propagated. Still, it has even more problems because ISETs are not authorized. Anybody can add to its ISET Google, Facebook, or your own autonomous system. So, and the problem, of course, amplifies from bottom to up because One iSet is violated, it is learned and included in other iSet, and so at the level of tier ones, we can expect that there are some problems. And also from these routing events, we can also expect that there are filters that are broken or there is no filters at all. So we decided to create an investigation to find out how many filters have been already violated. To do it, we started with origin validation. So we created an aggregator of all IRR data and to try to analyze globally announced prefixes. We found very interesting data. So it proved to be that a number of prefixes have wrong origin according to the root objects. There are also a significant number of prefixes that doesn't have any route object. The question was how it may happen. Unfortunately, there is a number of scenarios when this is legitimate behavior. So there are a legacy routing filtering that is using route sets or letters of authority. There are also ISPath pausing that are used by some ISPs in production, and some other scenarios. So it was impossible to figure out from origin validation, even using API, if these prefix is announced legitimately or not. So we decided to switch from hijacks to root leaks. Root leaks are simpler because root leaks are illegitimate. Sorry. And so we just took our first approach of origin validation. We took only prefixes that have a single root object and analyzed not only the root leaks, but the way the root leaks are propagated. So we analyzed the customer to provider links that are accepting root leaks, and with origin that is outside customer cone. So these root leaks should not be accepted, but they are. And so here are the results. From our research, at least 7% of all IP transit providers in IPv4 have problems with ingress filtering. I'm saying at least because this is for known root leaks that existed. There may be some problems that are not seen because there were no root leaks. One can say that, okay, the number is not so high. It's not such a big problem. But if we took a look at the results and sort the ISPs by the size, the result is different. All tier ones are affected. More than 50% of top 400 ISPs in IPv4 are also affected. The IPv6 looks a bit better, but it's not because IPv6 is better. Because it's still under deployment. There are less number of transits, less number of connections, and less number of changes. So there are also examples of root leaks that signals that something is terribly wrong. So it's not just a single mistake, it's signals that the filters are broken beyond repair. And one of these scenarios is when the root leak affects prefixes that are originated by tier ones. And here is a list of ISPs that accept root leaks that are originated by tier ones. Here is highlighted Russia ISPs, so including the biggest transit providers. So that's why there is no surprise that in Russia routing events are happening constantly, nearly every month. Here is China Telecom, China Unicom. Here is the biggest internet exchange in the world and another notable peering player. And here is Hurricane Electric, which is very big in IPv4 and already tier 1 in IPv6. So what can we say as a summary? In ideal situation, the ISETs AS sets and IRR filters can be used to significantly reduce the problem of hijacks and root leaks. But unfortunately, poorly maintenance of IS sets that happens from bottom to up just nullifies the effort of other players. If there is no filters or broken filters at the level of huge tier 1s, tier 2 network and access, okay, for example, I know that there are good filters made by NTT, Deutsche Telekom, and other big players, but we have Hurricane Electric that distributes leaks through the peering links with the other guys. And for your end users, it doesn't really matter why if you learned the hijacked prefixes of Google from customer, provider, or peering link. Your traffic is gone. So this how local holes in filtering becomes huge security holes. We have already discussed scenarios when BGP events resulted in denial of service, increased latency, but it's very useful for man-in-the-middle attacks. And here is another illusion. Lots of people are thinking that we do not have a lot of problems with man-in-the-middle. Yeah, we have encryption, and so our logins, passwords are safe, but they are not. Imagine that some attacker was able to redirect your ingress traffic, and end user is attempting to connect to the service, for example, financial service, at first at port 80. The attacker just also connects to port 80. After that, of course, he is redirected to encrypted connection. The encrypted connection is established, but it is established only between the attacker and the service. The connection between end user and attacker is still vulnerable. And so the attacker learns all sensitive data, including logins, passwords, all. And this how your problems in security, in ingress filtering, simplifies the way the attacker performing man-in-the-middle. So BGP have already become a native mechanism to redirect traffic. And here we are. What can you do to make this problem less critical? So it depends on the type of your network. If you're transit, you should remove all legacy stuff from your network and support strict IRR filters. You should also work with your customers, because if your customer add in its IS set IS/level 3, it's not good, it's your problem. And I know that some networks are working with their customers in this way. For example, good example here is data. But still, it should be done by all major players. You should think about establishing IRR filters with your private links. Because if you don't do it, you delegate your security and security of your customers to a network that you don't control. Think about it. And there are also some new kinds of filtering. Most of them are using IS-path attribute. They're quite useful in some scenarios, and you should consider using them too. So what is the place of access in here? The beginning is just the same, but at the same time, access can become can lead to routing innovation. access do not have full routing table, so they can perform strict routing checks, including RPKI. You can already do it, and you should try to do it. And multi-homes ISPs. You are the many, and you can expect that your upstream providers will protect you and help assist you if you are doing mistakes. But you have your homework too. You should keep your root objects up to date. You should think about what you are doing with your IS sets. You should create raw records, because it's important. Your transit providers will not support RPKI and RPKI cache before you will start to creating RAWs. And you should perform constant BGP monitoring, because it's your prefixes, it's traffic of your customers, it's your money. And if you want to be able to rapidly react on incidents, there is no other choice at the moment. So thank you for listening. Any questions?
Thank you very much. No questions? I have one quick question for you. Can you go back to the filtering part, IPv4 and IPv6?
Filtering.
It's going to be a quick question.
Okay. This one?
No. The one with IPv6. Yeah, perfect.
This one.
Great. It says at least 1% of ISPs have problem with filters. Is this because IPv6 is not deployed, or because it's deployed but people are actually not aware that they have filter problems? What do you think?
I think it is
both.
because IPv6 is still under deployment state, and not all IP transit providers that are active in IPv4 have support of IPv6.
Okay.
And so just less number of fat fingers in IPv6, but there will be more.
Yeah, I agree with you. So basically we have to wait and see with the IPv6 deployment coming up what's going to happen, right? For IPv4, even 7%, considering how long the IPv4 is deployed, it's quite a big number, right?
Yes, sure. And as I was talking about, the number of huge ISPs that are affected, it's nearly 100%.
Perfect.
That's the problem.
Great presentation. Thank you so much. And as I said, sugar at the end, we have Andrei Robachevsky from ISOC. He's going to speak about routing security in 2017. And my favorite part where he says, we can do better.
Yeah. So, okay, I use this to switch. Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Andrei Robachevsky. I work for ISOC. And I spent quite some time in coordinating this community project called Manus. But the topic of this presentation is I'd like to look at routing security, or the state of routing security in 2017, and convince you that we can do better than it is now, and try to show you how simple measures advocated by the Manus initiative can help. So I think, well, if you were not aware of the problem, I think previous presentations, they showed it very nicely. I think the core of the problem is in the BGP protocol, which is the main protocol how networks exchange reachability information. And the problem is there that the protocol is based on trust. Basically, without additional measures, what you accept from your peers, from your neighbors, you believe in that, and you propagate this information further. So if one of them has lied, you will propagate this lie further, and this lie spans continents. There's no built-in validation in BGP yet, and that's a problem. And because of that, you have to use some data which is not in BGP, which is somewhere out of band. And unfortunately, this data is incomplete, scattered, and sometimes incorrect. Well, headlines, I mean, the previous presenter presents some cases, so there is clear evidence that that's a problem, and when the problem happens, it actually have a very pretty global scale in many cases. I pulled this data from the service called bgpstream.com, and you can see these are 3 months of data, and you can see there is no single day without an incident. And well, what to say about incident? Well, a dozen of incidents happening relate to route hijacks and leaks. So what's happening there? Well, I think Alexander already told what route hijacks and route leaks are, but I put some nice pictures, so let me show them. So route hijack, that's where one network impersonates itself as another network, so it originates the prefix that belongs to someone else. And if operators accept this prefix start competing with the legitimate prefix announced by the network. And in many cases it wins, or in many regions it wins. It depends on how well it's propagated. So what happens is that if ISX as an attacker hijacks this prefix and ISB believes it, some traffic from ISA will not go to the destination that it's supposed to go, but go to the attacker X, the red dot. Well, classical example is YouTube hijack 2008. YouTube was taking off the internet for a couple of hours. That was very well analyzed and explored. Another type, I would say more tricky type, is route leak. And route leak, well, another name for this is violation of so-called valley-free routing principle. That's where you announce, or a network re-announces the prefix it learned from one provider to another provider, from peer to peer, things you shouldn't do. And so basically a network becomes, instead of a customer, a transit provider, and traffic goes through it. Well, in this particular example, the network IS64501, this orange network, starts leaking traffic announcement it learned from its transit provider B, the gray network. And if IS65500 accepts this announcement, which is usually the case if you don't have filters because you prefer customer announcements from anyone else, you actually think that you can reach Google, and that's the prefix in this example, Google public DNS through your customer with the consequences. So, well, in many cases, those are mistakes, fat fingers, as we call them. And in those cases, it's a self-inflicted and inflicted on others denial of service attack because the volume of traffic you cannot cope. But route leaks also offer an opportunity for eavesdropping in traffic, because you can actually inject yourself in any traffic path on the internet with this technique, and you can perform a man-in-the-middle attack, you can eavesdrop traffic and do other stuff. And there were some research on that and some case studies how you can do that. Well, that's another example of a route leak. Just for your information, that's one case study here. So let's look at 2017. Because one thing is that when we talk about routing security, in many cases we talk in terms of anecdotal evidence. And that is entertaining and very informative because we'll learn how things should not be done and what impact it can have. But I think important question is, how big is the problem? And even more important, are we doing better year after year after year? And I'll look at some statistics that I collected from the same BGP stream data, with some caveats. So, because without knowing intent, sometimes it's impossible to distinguish a legitimate change from an attack. This service is aimed at operators, and to be operationally relevant, it should reduce false positives. So there might be also events that are attacks which are not captured by this service. And country attribution, geographical attribution, is based on min-max data, so it has also its limitations. So if something is misplaced, that's my and min-max mistake. So let's look at the global stats. And the thing is, I was wondering, like, well, you know, outages, that's a real problem that operators feel pain from. What sort of, in all routing incidents, what the percentage of outages and real attacks, the routing security stuff has. And surprisingly, I was surprised that almost 40% of all incidents that happened in 2017 were routing security incidents, hijacks and route leaks. And here are some numbers. It's not insignificant. Over 10% of all networks, all autonomous systems on the internet, about 60,000, were affected by a routing incident. I pulled some statistics for this region, right? I have some global statistics, but I think it's interesting for you to look at Asia-Pacific region, how it performs here. And if we look at the outages, well, the two leading countries is India, Indonesia, with about almost 800 outages in 2017. And if you look at the operators, it's more or less better spread. But also you have to take this with a grain of salt, because I think if you normalize this data by the size of the country, by number of networks there, by number of prefixes announced, you may get a slightly different picture, right? So there is no finger pointing here. I just want to show you some stats. Another thing is, in my statistics, I'm looking just at incidents. I'm not looking at the impact. And for instance, Google leak that Alexander showed as one of the example comes here as one incident, while it had huge impact. So impact is not covered here. That's another caveat. If we look at potential victims, who are victims of this attack, whose address space was hijacked, whose address space was leaked, there's a slightly different picture. I think country-wise, well, you recognize the countries here. If we look at major victims, they are more evenly spread, if you can see. So, for instance, India is leading in top 10 potential incidents happening in the country, but it suffers slightly less, while the rest sort of, you see more or less one-to-one correspondence with the incidents and who suffered. So those events are pretty much localized. That's one of the messages. Culprits, those who inflicted pain on others and potentially on themselves. Well, again, a top country, I think half of the percent of all incidents, of all culprits in the country are in China and India. And, well, one network with this 321 incident, I have to say, I looked at the data more carefully, and this 300, well, almost all of them happen in consequent 3 days. So you may say that's one incident with huge impact. Strangely enough, this incident happened soon after, well, 3 days after the Google leak. And I haven't seen any coverage of this incident, so I think it would be interesting to research this further. It actually involved Verizon as well as with Google, but it involved China backbone as another network. Bogons. You know what bogons are? Well, when you talk about autonomous system numbers, it's unallocated numbers, and the same with address space, unallocated resources that people still announce on the internet. Well, bogon ISNs, Australia is leading the list with about 7 networks responsible for 52 unannounced autonomous systems announced on the internet. Well, there might be just leakage of some internal traffic engineering using unallocated autonomous system numbers. I think more dangerous when you see that unallocated address space is announced on the internet. Is it address quoting or something else? And imagine what happens when this space gets allocated. You immediately have a case of routing hijack in this case. So, well, we looked at this data, and I don't think it's a very positive picture here. And the question, of course, can we do better? And the second question, if we can, what are there solutions? I wouldn't say they're solutions. I would say they're building blocks. They're tools that are available and available for decades here. Look at prefix and nice path filtering. I mean, there are many BCPs. It's a known technique to apply. We have RPKI as a new technology, and some tools are already available. You can use RPKI validator, but you can also use sort of old proven tools like RToolset, IRRPT, BGPQ3 to generate your filters. And even BGPsec is standardized in the IETF, but of course that's for the future. But The problem is there is lack of reliable data. If you look at the data that all those tools are using, as I said, it's scattered, incomplete, and partly incorrect. And it's also lack of deployment, which is related to lack of incentives partly. It's what is called by the term tragedy of the commons. So from a routing perspective, if you implement all those measures, you sort of build these tools, you're actually not so much securing your own network. And if you look on from another side, security of your own network is in the hands of other operators. So big question is how you incentivize others to secure your own network. That's a real challenge. But I think what is here is that the more hands, the more networks perform that stuff, the better. That's clear. And one thing that also aggravates the problem that there are best current practices, there tutorials and stuff like that. There is no clear line between good and bad, saying, well, this is unacceptable and this is okay. And that sort of reduces the peer pressure we can apply on each other to become better in routing sense. So let me talk a little bit about this initiative, a community effort called Mutually Agreed Norms for Routing Security, abbreviated into MANAs. So it builds on collaboration. It builds on building community of security-minded network operators committed to routing security. And this commitment is not just you put your name on a website or you wear a badge. This commitment is supported by 4 actions that these networks are implementing. In those actions, those simple steps that I will explain in more detail, if deployed widely, they can significantly improve routing security. They're technology-based and neutral, so we're not promoting any specific technology or any specific tool. We're looking at the outcomes. But they're supporting materials that guide network operators how to implement this using existing tools. And what is also important, and that's why I'm presenting it here, is that this MANAs builds community. So members of MANAs that build community of security-minded operators that can expand the actions, that can have discussion, that can have other activities that improve routing security. So there are 4 actions. Sounds like motherhood and apple pie, but they are very limited in scope. And I have to say this is not best current practice. It's a minimum norm. It's absolute minimum. And sometimes people misunderstand and people get frustrated. They're saying, what are you promoting? We should do better. But this is not best current practice. And many of members of this initiative are doing much more than here. But this is the stepping stone to improving the state of routing security in the internet. Just one example, for instance, filtering. We're not talking about global validation, global filtering. We're talking about filtering your customer cone. Clean your side of the street. That's the message here. And global validation, since I mentioned that, it doesn't talk about global validation. It actually says, well, populate data related to your networks to improve reliability, completeness, and correctness of this data, so other third parties who are brave enough to validate globally can do that. And the many of us do this, the better the data is, the more chances and less risk to perform global validation at some stage. Let me go in a little bit detail and maybe illustrate this from some examples, trying to convince that those are really simple things that we can do. There's no reason not to do them. Filtering. So that's the sort of how this action is stated. Ensure the correctness of your own announcements and announcements from your customers to adjacent networks. So this is a typical MANAs, what we call MANAs topology. The networks, the black circle is the MANAs participant network. It has 2 customers, single home customers, and it has 1 peer, 1 provider. It's a very simple sort of sample topology. So there are 2 ways what sort of you can do this. There may be more, but 2 typical ways. One is using internet routing registry, right? And then this example for this region, the routing registry of users APNIC IRR. And in this scenario, the Manus network as 64500 will require its customers 501 and 502 to register their expected announcements in the IRR as route objects. IS64500 will also register its own route object, define its customer code using the ISSet object, and publish its routing policy with outnum object. And then IS64500 can use tools available like our toolset, RRPT, BGPQ3 to generate filters. Well, you can use RPKI. So in this case, it's very similar, but you would ask your customers to register ROAS. Well, supposedly, if all your customers and you operate in the Asia-Pacific region, you would use APNIC portal to generate certificates and ROAS. And then use, for instance, RPKI validator to inject very simple configuration thing and start validating. And there is support for RPKI validation for Cisco and Juniper, and I'm not aware, maybe for other platforms as well. Anti-spoofing. Well, another thing, and there was first presentation about DDoS and the reflection attacks on the rise, and the root cause of reflection attacks are ability to spoof source IP address, right? Send traffic with spoofed source IP addresses. So service providers have some responsibility here, right? And they have some tools to filter out those packets, this traffic, unwanted traffic. Well, one way, straightforward, use ACLs. And again, if we talk about an edge network with a few customers, I think that's not a very complex thing, right? You know your customer network, so you can install those ACLs. Actually, if you have route objects registered, right, for your customers, you can use this information to generate these filters. And of course, automation is key here. And please convince your customers to do egress filtering. Because in the internet, we're talking about defense in depth. If everyone does that, the risk is reduced significantly. So in this particular example, the Manus network will install ingress filters, which is BCP38, and it will convince their customers to install egress filtering, which is absolutely risk-free because the customer knows for sure what networks they are announcing or which networks they are hosting. Now, because this action is limited to single home stop customers, right? You can do this for multi-home, but it becomes a bit more tricky, a bit more risky. You can use strict URPF here without any fear. And this is, I think this is Cisco configuration on this slide, how you can use URPF. And that is a full automated thing. You don't need to even think what kind of networks your customer hosts, because this information you learn via BGP, and URPF utilizes FIB to make this decision whether it's unwanted traffic or not. So the same picture, slightly different technology. Coordination. Action is very simple. Please maintain global accessible up-to-date contact information. I think we had a discussion at the routing security BOF, and contact information is a very important component. It seems like a simple thing, but it actually helps when incident happen to coordinate mitigation. It's very important that you know who to call to. And there are multiple places. There's no single place where you can register that, right? And people have preferences. So my advice, register this information, maintain this up to date in different data sources. And here are 4 different sources where you can register information and different information. For instance, like at MyAPNIC, you can register contact information using those objects. IRR, you probably know those objects they bear contact information. Peering DB, mentioned often. And of course, your website. That's another place, but probably not always the most convenient place where you should register that. But if you cover those databases, there's a big chance that people that are looking for you will find you, and that's probably the objective. And finally, global validation. So populate. You already have all this data. Please maintain this data up to date so we all create global database of information where we can check validity of the assignments. So I mentioned those objects, and a Manus member would have outnum object with a routing policy published. They will have route objects for themselves. They will have route objects for their customers. And they will define their asset. So simple as that. For the simple topology, that's the exact information you need to register. And don't forget RPKI, register this as ROAS. So it doesn't hurt if you register this in two databases, as long as you maintain both of them. So we have more detailed guidance. Again, this was developed by BCOP community. A year ago, we have Manus implementation guide. Here's a URL, and it contains more detailed guidance how to implement those actions. Based on this BCOP, we have developed a set of online modules. They were just recently announced. Here's the URL, and you can, at your own pace, learn how to implement Manus. It's online training course. We're also looking for establishing classes, a moderated class where people can participate and go through this online training with the help of moderator, to whom they can ask questions, get additional guidance, so forth and so on. So if you're interested, let us know. We're working on that, on creating those classes and having moderated sessions. So I guess the question why to join Manus is very important. I talk about those 4 actions, but maybe not clearly articulate why should we follow and what should we join. Well, one thing is, I think from this presentation, hope it's clear that those measures will improve your security posture, and that's very important, not only for routing, but for other things that you're doing as an operator. The second thing is, by joining Manus, you're actually not just putting this on the website. You're joining a community of security-minded operators, right? I think having this community and having activities in this community is very important. And then another thing, you can use Manus, as Manus getting more recognized as a mark of sort of, the security commitment. You can use Manus as a differentiator. When you peer, I think reputation of networks you peer is an important decision factor. Would you like to peer, or would you apply the same policy when you peer with someone who probably will send 40% of junk at you, or with a network that you think is has its act in order and has clean, hygienic routing? I think Manus can provide this information, can signal that networks has this commitment that can be used as a differentiator. It can also be used as a commercial differentiator when you go for like 10-10 contracts, and we are working to make sure that this label is recognized by enterprises, by your potential customers. But another thing is, okay, well, if I already implement Manus actions, why should I join? It doesn't improve my security posture, it's already good, right? While joining community, I can probably understand that. I think here my answer would be, if you implement this stuff, return on investment of resources you spend depends how many people outside your network implement the same thing. So if you join Manus, you actually amplify the message for others to join. So please, if you're up to speed, if you're up to scratch, your security is good, please join, and also take this as an opportunity to share your experience. I think I said that. That's a Manus. Now, what this is again? This is the website, and if you have questions, please send us email. Now, I wonder where's my. Yeah. Now, what I wanted to do a quick poll. So don't scan this QR code. It's wrong. But I will show you shortly the right one. Now, the URL is correct, so you can type the URL if you want. But I will show you the QR code. If we can.
This is the same poll, like few days ago?
No, that's a different one. But can I click on this URL somehow? Okay, well, we already started the poll. I apologize. Has everyone picked the URL? No. That's what I suspected. Now, this is the correct QR code. You can scan that, and this is the correct URL. You can type it in.
Come on, it's going to be fun.
And what we are going to do, we are going to answer simple questions and watch the results here. I think that would be very informative for me, for sure, but maybe also interesting for you. Who has got that?
We need more support. Can you please scan the code?
Okay, ready to go? 1, 2, 3. Okay, first question. Have you experienced network incidents related to routing security? It's a multiple choice, so please vote. There are some questions that we use in the both, but there are also other more manner specific questions. Okay, well, 42 people participate, so we'll use this as a benchmark for moving to the next question. Let's move on. Is routing security important to your network? I mean, do you think routing security, solving that problem, is important? That's an interesting split, I have to say, between people that, for whom difficult to implement managed actions. And in this case, I really hope that the resources that we're working on and providing, we're also working on a hands-on lab on implementing managed. So I hope those resources will help to reduce this orange bar. And I'm very happy to see this support in the green bar. So there is a community that want to work together to improve routing. That's very encouraging. Yes, we can move on. So all these results are recorded, and the URL we can use to look at those results later as well, if you wish. So next question: have you implemented managed actions? Not necessarily joined, but implemented. That's the question. If you're joined, that's also great.
Does this mean all the actions or some of them?
Well, the actions, they are listed. So you have to select
okay,
specific
thanks. I see
actions
now.
that you implement.
Thanks.
And again, this is not about boiling the ocean. The actions are very limited in scope. If you filter your customers, that's action 1. If you implement basic anti-spoofing for your customers, your infrastructure, that's 2. If you have your NOC email address and maybe a telephone number available, registered in databases, action 3. And if you register this data in IRR peering DB, that's or IRR RPKI, that's global validation.
So this 65 votes means that 65 people voted in the room, right?
No,
Or all
because
together?
it's multiple choice.
Ah,
It's
okay.
multiple
Thanks.
choice. So we have 40 participants now. Let's wait for the rest too.
I guess one
Where's
more
the
to go.
42nd participant?
42 is the answer. Please, 42.
Okay, I think we can move on. I
Oh,
think-
42. Thank you, number 42.
No, we got 42, so that's in the results. We can roll back
Okay.
later. So if you implement actions, would you join Menace? I really like the way it goes. Okay, well, I think we're stabilized. Thank you very much for those results. So, as I showed on the previous slide, it's very easy to join Menace. There is a form. If you go to the Menace website, join us. You fill the form, provide as much information as possible, because that allows us to determine your level of readiness with Menace actions. We may ask, and we usually ask you to run a few tests. Please do. And then, yeah, if you pass all those tests, you'll become a member of Menace. This completes the poll, my presentation, so I think I'm open for questions.
So I think we have a couple of questions. 2 questions, please. The winner is first who goes to the microphone. Okay, I see one. Hello, Edward.
Maybe you can put up the URL. Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Hi, sorry, would it be possible to ask for a show of hands of who is already a Manners participant?
Yes, please.
That wasn't a question.
Who is participating in Manners already? That's it? Oh, okay. We have a lot of work to do then.
Well, I saw 23 potential sign-ups, so we're waiting for these people to come and join this community. And hopefully next time we meet here or elsewhere, we'll see more hands. And thank you for the suggestion for this question.
Perfect. No other questions, right? Okay, you're ready to go to the break. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending the session.
Thank you very much.
Bye.